Hello, Tere, Estonia. It's so great to be here. I'm really grateful for the invitation, and this is personally my favorite topic. Just a little bit of background. I was born in New York with also an island family background, Dominican Republic, and after going to college, I found myself in Asia. So I basically have been living in Asia for the past 10 years. And so this trend or this rhythm of how to engage in a new market, this is something that's very familiar to me because first I was in China, right? So I was a Latina girl in China, learning the language. Then I found myself in Korea, a little bit of Japan. So I really enjoyed this process of knowing, learning a new language and kind of adopting myself into the culture, right? So what we're talking about here is adopting innovative technology, right? And crypto into new markets, okay? So just an overview so you don't just fall asleep or so you know what we're getting into here. We're gonna be talking about crossing the chasm, knowing the why, the branding of what you're doing, and collective action, okay? Okay, so ACTX, our mission is to usher digital innovation and blockchain adoption through venture building and experience design. Okay. And basically, part of the venture building, the main part is what do we do in this market launch, right? So I use the term experience design intentionally because I believe it's very important to know the experience, right, of the user, of the company, of whoever you're dealing with. What is their experience that they're going to engage with, and what are you bringing to the table, right? And so how we do this is that we do strategic design, and we analyze, we do profiles, and we basically run down who and a targeted focus information about who we're targeting, whoever your product is. Okay, so for cryptocurrencies, and what you see here is the disruptive innovation curve, right? So the curve of adoption. And in the work that I do, I find it extremely important to get insights, right? Insights and information, field research, to know who you're targeting, very, very detailed, to be able to adopt to this curve. Now let's get a little bit deeper into the curve. So I really recommend applying this kind of the concepts of these curves and the strategies will be very useful to your startup. I recommend Jeffrey Moore, the book Crossing the Chasm, which is one of my top favorites. So just to review briefly, we have, in any disruptive innovation, we're going to have innovators and early adopters, right? Here we're talking about the Steve Wozniaks, the Jobs, the Satoshi Nakamoto's, the Vitaliks, right? So these are people that are onto the game, very interested in something that's new, something that's different, and it doesn't really matter if it's useful to them, but they want to do something, and a lot of times it's theoretical. They want to be ahead of the curve, ahead of the game, right? These are the people that are in line for hours getting the new iPhone. They just want what's new and what's hot, right? So that's the innovators and the early adopters. The next group, which is the early majority, okay, these are people that are more pragmatists, right? So they'll be looking around, like people maybe here, some of you, right? Hey, have you heard about blockchain? Do you use crypto? Have you bought Bitcoin? Oh, no, you haven't? Yeah, me neither. You know, so they look to their peer group to determine the response to new innovative technology. Are you using it? Is he using it? Is Uncle John using it? Well, I guess I should use it if Uncle John uses it, right? So this is a group, right, that needs kind of affirmation from their peers to know whether they're going to adopt a new technology, right? And then we got the late majority, and that's once it's already mainstream, and everybody's using it. Okay, well, let's jump on the board. And then there's the laggards, and that's just like, you guys are crazy, you've always been crazy, stay away from me, right? So this is basically the curve of how technology is adopted. Now, what we're talking about, the chasm, is that there is a very big gap, right, depending on your strategy, a big gap between the early adopters, the innovators, and the early majority. And any startup, right, if they want to become successful, right, need to jump or cross this chasm, right? So how does that happen? How are you going to make that happen in your projects, right? So one of the biggest problems with this curve is that if, peers, so if to become mainstream, peers need to know advice from their peers. But if no one's using it, if it's brand new, then they don't have peers to tell them about this new product and assure them that they'll be safe, right? So we come into a problem here. So what this theory suggests is that you need to focus on the pragmatists in pain, right? So let's say all the people in the world, they're using fiat, I use cash, I like cash, what's wrong with my cash? Stay away from my cash, right? So there's no problem, there's no pain point. And this I particularly enjoy the sexy use case of crypto payments, but this can be for any B2B, for SaaS in particular, right? There needs to be a particular pain point, right? So startups should focus on this group that is their pragmatists in pain, right? So there's a highly specific group and pain point within the big realm that you want to attack, right? So I know, CEOs are visionaries and they want the whole market. They want the billion market cap, right? But sometimes it's better to, spark that fire with a smaller group. And so there's a great phrase that Jeffrey Moore says, which is, big enough to matter, small enough to win. So let's say, yes, you want that huge market cap, but how about you focus on the 50 million users that have a very specific problem that you can solve. And you can be the best at solving that one problem. And this is, I think, my top recommendations to projects that I work with is that you're amazing, you're fantastic, I love you. I love your brain, and I'm glad you're working on these infrastructure problems. But let's think about the market reality for a second. You're burning, the small money you have or the seed round you have on these great things that are going to be amazing for the future, but you have to focus on something specific, right? What is big enough to matter, right? But small enough to win, right? Because you want to win in that first use case, and then you can hop onto other use case and take it all. Take the cake, keep dreaming. I love dreamers, okay? So I'm going to actually go through that with you, a small example and a fun example. I know everyone was really tired from yesterday. So so just kind of in a specific example for IBM surveyed 200 government officials, right, in 16 countries, and using kind of this curve, asked them questions on why blockchain was not about, what was going to be the difficulties of adopting blockchain. And they mentioned regulatory constraints, immature technology, lack of executive buy-in, insufficient skills, lack of a clear ROI, and insufficient business case. Okay, so I don't know about you, but if I'm a blockchain founder with a project, I look at this list and I might be quite intimidated, right? So instead of focusing on all of these hindrances, right, you could just focus on one in particular. Okay, so now I've given you enough of the kind of back end and the theories. I really do suggest you study this curve. There's really great books about it. Now I want to just give you a fun example of what would it take for doing a KYC for your company. I'm not talking about the awkward selfies with your license that you try to know your customer process. I'm talking about knowing your end user, right? So how can you go through the process? And it's as simple as just trying. It's as simple, there's lots of complicated ways, right? Surveys or online data scraping. But I'm just going to give you a fun example so that we can enjoy a little bit. So who here has a mother? Okay, I don't see all the hands, okay? Okay, so most of you have a mother, right? And it's a fun thing. Some people say, try to explain your concept to a kindergartner. I would rather explain it to my mom because everybody has a mom. Not everyone has a kindergartner. I sure don't, okay? So this is my mama, okay? So we're gonna go through this process of, if I have a product and I'm explaining blockchain to my mom, right? So for my mom, right, she is retired. These are her grandchildren. This is her sister. She is around like let's say 55 to 65-year-old woman from South America. These are the people in her peer group, right? So if she's in the pragmatist group, who are the people that she deals with day to day? Who are the people that she talks to? When she, asks her daughter, what she does, she goes to her, sister, her peer group to ask, hey, what do you think about Bitcoin? What do you think about what my daughter does, right? So her main motivations are to take care of her grandchildren, to be a good mom, to make great meals, right? So this is the profile of this woman, right? So, okay, what does mom think about Bitcoin? Okay, so look at that face. Is that a positive face? No, my dear friends. So when my mom will talk to her peer groups, okay, think about this: South American, deep Catholic community, right? So is Satoshi the Antichrist? Probably, okay, So I would come back from trips. They would see my mom knows how to use Facebook now, and she sees my posts, and she's like, what are you doing out there? And what is this Bitcoin thing? And I think he might be the devil, And I'm like, no, Mom, it's not like that, right? So I wouldn't have known so much about now this profile of the South American demographic, this older demographic, if it wasn't for these doubts and these questions that my mom had, right? So as a wonderful daughter, what was my next steps? Obviously, I'm going to take my mom to a blockchain cruise, okay? So I decided, I'm like, you know what? I need to show her that I actually have a job, that these people are kind and maybe a little bit crazy, but these people are good people. So I brought her last year to the blockchain cruise, right? So, I don't think she understood a lot of what Roger Ver had to say, but one thing I do appreciate from the way he projects and he advertises, right, Bitcoin is he simplifies it, right? So for me, before taking her to the cruise, I tried to give her some lessons. And what it came down to is I needed to understand her needs. I needed to understand things that were important to her, right? So she came to America from Paraguay, and she worked very hard, and she would send money back to her family, right? So she understood this concept, and she had been working her whole life, right? And she would always send money back using Western Union, and all these fees, right? So I would start telling her and describing to her, and I'm like, hey, Mom, you don't have to pay those fees anymore with Bitcoin. It's not from the devil, Mom. It's just the technology. You can use it. Look at how you're using Facebook, right? It's easy to send messages. A to B, peer to peer, easy transactions, right? Low fees. But if I started talking to my mom about this blockchain or that blockchain or ERC20 tokens or all these things, or scalability, what about scalability? Those don't matter to this woman, which her profile is 55 to 65, aging, Latin American, deeply Catholic person, right? So it was important to describe in the language what Bitcoin is to my mom, right? And not only that, so then we can brainstorm now. So what is this why? Apple, for example, right? In the past decade, they've been able to cross the chasm. They've been able to influence 3 major industries, right? Music, telephones, computers, right? So they are able to do this because their why is so powerful, right? So now I know the profile of my customer, and I know her pain points, right, deeply. And what is Bitcoin, right? So I don't have to technically tell her what it is, but what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a way for you to preserve what you've worked for. A way for you to be safe, especially what's going on right now in the United States with immigration, a way for you to be safe and know that your hard-earned money can be sent to your family and friends, right? So if we create the language and the branding and the why of these disruptive technologies that can be hard to explain, then we can more powerfully give this message of Bitcoin and what it is to people who don't understand. But once again, it has to be in the perspective of what they care about and in the perspective of their major pain points. So thank you for meeting my mom. She's now my crypto mama. We often talk about Bitcoin, and it's been a good time. So basically what we just went through is what we go through with our clients. And the first step is, right, to empathize with your customer, doing the research, knowing the profile specifically of what you're trying to solve, right? And that, I use the example of my mom, that's B2C, but this is very, very applicable to B2B, for SaaS, and for almost any other thing. You just have to know what your customer is, define the problem, just get as detailed as possible to knowing exactly what the problem is, who else has the problem, and hopefully it's going to be in that industry a problem that not only your customer has, but a lot of people, remember, big enough to matter, but small enough to win, a lot of people in that niche group have, right? So that they'll be talking to each other, they will be wanting your solution for this problem. So ideate solutions. And this should be happening as you're building product. You're also ideating solutions for marketing and how to get to your client, and then execute and analyze. So I just wanted to play a short video. This is a campaign we're doing in Amsterdam, and it has to do with merchant adoption for crypto payments. I just wanted to play a teaser. The results aren't out yet, but we're in progress on the ground.
I don't necessarily think that crypto mass adoption is important. It's people's understanding of what specifically Bitcoin, and not just cryptocurrency, but what options Bitcoin brings to them. And I think when people realize what Bitcoin brings to the table, the mass adoption will come naturally.
There's a lot of people that own crypto assets, but can't really buy daily tangible things here, not at mass yet. So I think it's a starting point to do it in a place where we have coffees on a daily basis or consume food on a daily basis. So I think this is a good start.
People have to understand that it's easy, it's not so hard. And another thing, that the crypto, it's not only for speculations on the exchanges, that it's a real money, it's a real thing to use in everyday life.
Yeah, so basically that's the currently we're on the ground in Amsterdam and we're working on a merchant adoption campaign. But something for me, as someone who has worked in Asia for over 10 years, this has been very challenging because Dutch people are very different from Asian people, right? So now I'm just like I went through the process with my mother. I'm going through the process, right, as we're doing field research and we're learning about people in the Netherlands. I am learning what makes them tick, what motivates them, and it's a different process than what would be any person in the world, right? So it's really important for us to go through this design thinking process and really be able to motivate our wonderful Dutch merchants to accept crypto. So this is one of my favorite quotes: imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited, imagination encircles the world. So here we come to the last point stick with me. The last point, which is collective action. So the campaign that we're doing in Amsterdam, we plan to do it upcoming in London, in Paris, in Korea, in Japan, right? But those are only a few cities, right? I really believe that, for me, my own personal thesis after reading this book is that, to cross the chasm for technology adoption, we should collaborate with the creative. So what are things that people enjoy, love? Food. My dad was a chef, so food, art, VR, right? Video, things that are fun and engaging. I'm choosing to start with food and using that use case to do this merchant adoption, but there's so much more that we can do and use our creativity to inspire humans, right? So there we go. Let's work together and let's win together. If me and my team can attack 5 cities this year, what can we all do together? So I hope if you guys are interested in this use case and interested in doing these kinds of adoption campaigns, you can contact me, ActX Design, ChristyAna Taveras, and we can discuss together. Thank you.